Good morning, everybody. It's Tuesday, December 17th, 5:24 a.m. Central Time. Grain markets are mixed this morning. Pretty quiet trade. March corn futures up 3/4 of a cent at 4.45 3/4. January soybeans down 1/4 cent at 9.81 3/4. March Chicago wheat is unchanged at 5.50. March Kansas City wheat down 3/4 of a cent at 5.58 1/2. March spring wheat down 1 1/2 at 5.98 1/2. We had a soybean crush number out yesterday. Why don't we start there?
The National Oilseed Processors Association released November crush data yesterday. The U.S. soybean crush declined last month when NOPA members processed 193.2 million bushels. The crush was down 3.4% from the record high set in October, but up 2.2% compared to November of last year. The crush was also the largest on record for the month of November and the fourth largest ever for any month. End of month soybean oil stocks in November increased to 1.08 billion pounds. Stocks were up 1% from the end of October, but down 11% versus year ago stocks. Additionally, stocks fell below the average trade estimate of 1.12 billion pounds.
We are crushing a lot of soybeans in the United States, and we will crush a record amount of soybeans during the current marketing year, which began in September and will end at the end of August. USDA has told us as much. What they've also told us is that exports are going to be low relative to what we've seen, say, the last 10 years. We're just not exporting the amount of soybeans that we used to. And those are the two big segments of our demand base for soybeans in the United States, crush and exports. So while we're crushing a record amount of beans, the exports have been kind of a drag. And you can look at it through this lens. This is a very simple look at the USDA's most recent balance sheet numbers for the United States. And yeah, they've got a record crush projected 2.41 billion bushels for the current marketing year. That export number, 1.825 billion, I think that's fair right now, given the pace of sales and shipments. Residual and seed on the demand side is really not a big needle mover. The supply side of the U.S. balance sheet, it can change in January. If USDA is going to adjust yield lower again, they'll do it in January. They could mess around with acres. I don't think the beginning stocks is a big deal, but this leaves you with a carryout number of 470 million bushels. My numbers here don't add exactly due to rounding, and a U.S. stocks to use ratio of 10.8%. 10.8% relative to history is fairly high. It's close to what we saw in following the 2017-2018 marketing year, slightly above that. And that was a time frame that was not associated with good soybean prices by any stretch of the imagination. So to get this thing down below like 10%, it's going to be really tough to do. We're either going to need to really turn on the export program. I don't think the crush is going to move a whole lot. Maybe the yield comes down in January, and that helps you out a little bit. The even more bearish item when it comes to beans is the global supply and demand situation, which we've talked about at length. USDA is projecting the second highest stocks to use ratio on record for the world, which is largely a function of a big Brazilian crop that's expected. So even though we're crushing a lot of beans, guys, I mean, supply demand situation, both domestically and globally, just doesn't look very friendly to me.
Failed negotiations over farm aid are delaying the stopgap funding bill. The bill was expected to be released on Sunday, but disagreements over economic farm assistance and other provisions caused Speaker Mike Johnson to delay its release. Johnson is dealing with a slim majority and pushback from conservatives as he works to fund the government before Saturday's shutdown deadline. Ag state lawmakers are advocating for the stopgap to include a 1-year extension of the Farm Bill and additional funding for farmers impacted by severe weather. GOP leaders are pushing for an additional $12 billion in economic aid for farmers. Many agricultural groups are urging lawmakers to reject the spending package if it doesn't include the billions of dollars in farm aid.
This is a fluid situation. Fresh news is pending. I was told maybe we'd see something yesterday. I was told maybe late last night. I have not seen anything. It's 5:30 in the morning. Maybe by the time you guys watch this, there'll be some news out, but there's nothing yet. Farm district Republicans are not happy with Mike Johnson because they want this to be included. We talked about some of the other factors yesterday. Do farmers actually want this? That's a big question mark. Go back and watch yesterday's episode. Some farmers absolutely think, yeah, we need the aid. Other farmers say that they don't. It looks like when this comes out, what I've been told, it's going to be watered down versus the initial proposal. Initially, they were talking $20 billion. I think now they're talking 10, and the distribution and how it actually works is going to be a little bit different. There's going to be some more stipulations. It's not going to be as blanketed as the original proposal. But again, we don't know for sure yet. So when we know, you guys will know.
The Brazilian real fell to a record low on Monday. Real. So to strengthen the real and reduce its volatility, the central bank sold 1.63 billion in a dollar spot auction. The move was unsuccessful, and hours later, the real declined by more than 1% to close at 6.14 per dollar. The central bank also raised interest rates by 1% last week and promised two more similar hikes. The measures have had little impact due to increased government spending, driving up inflation expectations. Brazil's president, however, blames the central bank for the fiscal issues and is defending the government's recent fiscal package.
That's how I say it in the United States is real. In Brazil, they probably say it differently. Anyways, when they chart these currency pairs, the dollar, it's always relative to the dollar. So the dollar is record strong versus the Brazilian currency. If you were to flip this chart upside down, you could say the Brazilian currency is record weak versus the dollar. U.S. soybeans are less competitive versus Brazilian soybeans when the U.S. dollar is strong versus the Brazilian currency. Soybeans on the export market are traded in dollars. So when the real is weak, Brazilian exporters can basically lower their prices in U.S. dollars just a little bit while maintaining the same purchasing power locally. And that's really what they care about more than anything. This is, am I going to say this is an outright bearish item with regard to the soybean market? Like, is there a fund trader selling soybeans this morning because of the Brazilian currency situation? I don't know, maybe, but it's not the biggest factor. There has been a change in the competitiveness situation with regard to the U.S. versus Brazil. Brazil's becoming a lot more competitive just in the last several days. And most of that is because Brazilian weather looks good. They've got a forthcoming harvest. Early harvest in Brazil is going to start in, January, February. It has more to do with that than it does with this. This is just kind of an extra punch in the gut in addition to all the negative supply and demand stuff that we already discussed.
So if you guys have not checked out our premium content, you sure need to do so. Joe, can you tell me about yesterday's premium video?
Shay was on yesterday with what I would call some hardcore grain marketing information. Grain sales, reconcile or speculate. One of the biggest problems in grain marketing, and particularly with the brokerage industry, and I have a lot of problems with the brokerage industry, but one of the biggest problems is that, you're a farmer and you're going to buy a put option to hedge a bushel of corn, or you're going to buy a call option to re-own a bushel that you sold, which I hate, by the way. I don't like re-ownership. In any case, do you actually reconcile that position with your cash grain sales at the end of the day? Most farmers don't, and they're left kind of confused. What exactly did I accomplish in my brokerage account? Did I accomplish anything? Did I make money? Did I lose money? And if so, how many cents per bushel actually did I make or lose over the course of a year? Some of you guys are trading way too much, and you shouldn't be trading very much, if at all. And the more you trade, the more difficult this becomes. And in an environment like this where margins are non-existent to razor thin, every penny counts. So if you're not reconciling your cash grain sales with your futures and options activity, you absolutely need to be doing that. And Shay talked about and discussed how he does that in yesterday's video. I would check that video out, guys. It's real grain marketing information that can provide real ROI for you guys on the farm. Go to standardgrain.com. You can sign up this morning. I'll forward you a copy of this morning's email, which includes that video. It takes about 30 seconds to sign up. We do Apple Pay, Google Pay, Cash App. It can all be done on your phone. Everything in the email, all the videos are very easily accessible on your phone. Piece of cake. Give that deal a shot this morning, guys.
Brazilian farmers have nearly finished planting soybeans. According to well-followed private group Ag Rural, soybean planting in Brazil is practically complete. Recent rainfall has provided favorable growing conditions throughout the majority of the country. However, far southern areas have received excessive precipitation. Ag Rural is anticipating this season's soybean crop to reach 171.5 million metric tons.
Monster crop estimated, and they have every reason to estimate a monster crop. The weather forecast is damn near ideal at this point. Yeah, some areas in the south had too much rain, but they're going to be a little bit drier than normal here over the next 10 days. Here's a good map from our friends at Crop Profit. So southern Brazil, where they had seen excessive rain, they're going to see below normal rainfall over the next 2 weeks, whereas Mato Grosso, places further north and to the east also, they're going to see above normal rainfall. So we have every reason right now to believe that USDA is correct with its estimate, and if anything, they might even be too low, which is pretty scary.
U.S. soybean shipments declined last week. USDA reported that 62 million bushels of beans were inspected for export during the week ending December 12th. The print was down 3.5% from the previous week, but up 18% compared to the same week last year. Corn shipments were near the upper end of pre-report expectations at 44 million bushels. The print was up 6.8% compared to the previous week and up 18% versus the same week last year. Wheat shipments were reported at 11 million bushels. The print was up 20% from the previous week and up 4.7% versus the same week last year.
Row crop shipments are strong. Soybean shipments well above the same week last year, and they are on pace to hit USDA's target. Corn shipments, I think marketing year to date, are up like 30% versus the same period last year. Say what you want about it. Maybe it's because we've got trade wars coming. Maybe it's just because our stuff is cheap and we're competitive and buyers are interested. I mean, demand is a good thing, and I'm not going to say it's not. There's still that narrative about front running. Maybe that's the case. I don't know. You just go with what we're seeing, and what we're seeing is very good with regard to corn in particular, and also soybeans. What did cattle do yesterday?
Cattle futures were lower. Live cattle were 7 cents to $2.05 lower. Feeders were 75 cents to $2.10 lower. Box beef was higher. Choice ended the day at $317.37. That was up 98 cents. Select ended the day at $289.57. That was up 5.71.
Outside markets, a little bit of movement. U.S. dollars a little bit higher. Stocks are off. The S&P is down 15. The Dow Jones is down 150. Bonds are off a little bit. Gold's down $16. Crude oil down 57 cents in the February WTI at 69.72. Have a great day, guys. We'll be back on Wednesday.